What is up, guys? Today we've got something a little different. So you know how I always do these new build videos and stuff? A lot of the time it comes from me stalking a few Koreans that main the champion. In theory, when you've got like 2,000 games played on someone at high elo as well, like you've got a bit of a better idea of what to do, right? So I kind of try to lean on their experience a bit. Anyway, today I thought instead of me using like those to make a guide video, I'd just talk about the specific person and look at something I think is really cool. Part of the reason this is cool is because it's also living proof of if you actually want to get better at the game, you have to play a lot of the game, funnily enough. Like the more you play on one champion as well, the better off you're going to be. And if you take one thing away from this video, it's his plan that wins him most of his games. This time we're going to take a look at the 2.5 million mastery Elise player that holds the number 30 spot in Korean Challenger solo queue. So let's get started. So how many games does it actually take to get 2.5 million mastery points on a champion? Now this account only goes back as far as season 5. I think he must have had another account before that because he shot up to master tier in his first season, but that first season was 632 games with a 57% win rate. The next season, season 6, was 1,816 games just on Elise with a 58% win rate. That is super impressive, and so far in this season, 637 games as Elise with a 60% win rate in Challenger Elo. Over those 3 seasons, he's managed to rack up 1,883 double kills, 151 triple kills, and 11 quadra kills. Sadly, no pentas yet. This nets him around a 3.5 KDA as well, 8.5 kills per game, almost 5 deaths, and about 8 assists. Somehow, he's even managed to get 23 kills in one game this season. Last season, that was 26 kills in one game, which is pretty nuts for an Elise. Stat-wise, there are a few things that have changed over the seasons that he's been playing when he's gone from Master to Challenger over in Career. The first thing is he's had way more assists on average. The second thing is more towers killed per game as well, and also more damage. Kind of interesting because a champion has stayed relatively the same, right? There's no major changes to Elise that's happened or anything like that. So the damage increasing a lot just shows you how much more powerful AP items are now in the game. That was a little introduction, but the point of this video is more to show you what he does that's a lot different, and the first thing is the pathing in the jungle every single game. It's almost always buff, wolves, then the second buff, and gank at like 2 minutes 30 into the game. That is way earlier than anybody expects, and he's getting first blood so often, it is insane. When you watch him, it's so obvious that he has a really clear plan in his head of what he actually wants to do in the game. This first clear release in the jungle into a gank is something that he does all of the time. On the blue side, for example, it would be red buff with Elise from the bot lane straight into wolves on the other side of the map, and then the blue buff, and then ganking top lane afterwards. The other side of the map, the red side, would be blue buff to start with, then wolves, then over to the red buff and ganking straight away. So that is the first part of his plan. Now the second part, no joke, every game he bases and gets mobility boots as soon as he has the gold for them. So around like 3 or 4 minutes into the game. And when he has double buffs early as well, he really does not farm that much except in the enemy jungle at least. He's constantly trying to fight someone or gank someone and use that red buff. Obviously with the mobility boots, that doesn't really change much either, right? He's going to farm, he's going to take the camps on the side and then run around the river trying to make something happen. That's something as well that's kind of interesting. He plays to one side of the map mostly, so at least for a period of time, like he might swap between the game, but for like 5 minutes roughly, he'll only be on one side of the map. He'll go to the top side of his jungle, right? He'll farm the camps there and then try to gank mid or top, but if he can't, he's going to go into the enemy jungle to ward or farm the enemy camps. He really doesn't waste time by going between the bottom and the top sides of the jungle at least, and that first phase in the game is pretty important. It is legit a tactic he uses every time, and it's almost always getting him kills, so once you have that down, it's more time for the build. The weirdest thing to do with the build is actually the blue trinket, to be honest. It's the first thing I noticed that is out of the ordinary. When did you last see a jungler getting a blue trinket? He does buy a lot of control wards, which kind of makes up for the sweeper, I guess, but he uses it to scout objectives, placing it in the enemy jungle to keep track of the jungler, but also to invade so he doesn't have to face check. If you're in range to put a ward into a bush, you're in range of a lot of skill shots and a lot of danger, right? But with a blue trinket, you can face check from much further away to see if anybody is in there. He really does love to invade and get behind laners, but that's pretty risky, I guess, actually. So blue trinket is his way of getting around that. So actual build wise then, proto belt is a bit of a troll item, I think, but he builds it every single game on Elise. He has like full damage. Mobility boots will be the first thing, then we go into the runic echoes, you get the blue smite first and then the AP afterwards, and then into proto belt. Now he uses it in 2 ways, 2 main ways, kind of 3, I guess. Number 1 is to add to his burst combo if he cocoons someone. So legit, he wants to one-shot a lot of people. Like he will run around in spider form and use his proto belt to add to his burst. Number 2 is to add to the range to his cocoon, so he proto belts and then uses his E afterwards. And number 3 would be to escape if he gets caught. At least doesn't really have any mobility, so proto belt is that kind of way out. Once he gets these 2 items, he is super confident and he will go in and try and one-shot everybody. Like having that burst extra on the proto belt when you're going in for the combo, you can almost one-shot one-shot people anyway, and that just adds enough damage. Leandri is also for the spell penetration and even more burst damage, which is really strong. The burn is nice, but really it's a spell pen actually for Elise. Abyssal Scepter also works for like a similar reason. I guess your base damage is so high, so 10% and more magic damage can actually do quite a lot here. Plus it's really good versus heavy AP. He only buys this item when he's against like 2 to 3 AP champions, by the way, so he does adjust his build quite a lot. Dark Seal into Medjai's is another thing that he does quite a lot. If he's snowballing, he's going to do it anyway, and if it doesn't work out, he just sells the Dark Seal. Dark Seal has a really good resale value anyway actually, so it's not even that risky to pick one up if you think you're going to get ahead. When he's playing Elise, games do not really go much longer than that, to be honest, because he's so aggressive, but Rylai's is also something there as well. It seems to be mostly when he doesn't have another tank on his team though, so he needs to be a bit more of a frontline. Guardian Angel against burst damage, but it's almost only when he's also got a Medjai's though, so I think it's actually to protect the stacks, not really to protect himself. I'm not even going to class the Guardian Angel as a defensive item really. He's using it to hold onto the AP on that Medjai's to keep it at full stacks, so it's just that 2-item combo really. The only true defensive item he gets is Banshees, and that's against really heavy crowd control or something specific that can screw up his burst rotation and just get him bursted down when he dives into a fight. This build is very squishy, right? If he goes in and he tries to burst somebody but he gets crowd controlled, he is kind of actually just going to die instantly. Lulu is one of the main ones he builds it against as well. Malzahar is another. Syndra, Twisted Fate. These have like long range disengage tools or stuns basically that lock her down in team fights. Now runes, we have attack speed reds, AP blues, 5 health per level yellows, and 4 armor, and 3 AP quints. It's very specific, but it gives some better scaling into the game, plus you have good clear and also good gank damage as well. Mastery is 12-18, so there's nothing that special here except Grandfather's Gift, which we don't see a ton of. It's just adding to the burst though, which is how he plays her. Now the early game is all about ganking, right? Invading and farming one side of the map really, like we said before, but there's one thing he does do a lot, and that is dive. Elise is super good at diving just because she can drop aggro with her E, and she also has a lot of damage and some crowd control, so we go back to a lane with no flash normally and keep punishing it. Normally that is top lane. Honestly, this is the one he dives the most. He ganks it at the very start of the game, and then he keeps trying to loop around to secure kills. Like normally he goes from the back side of the tower and the top laner goes from the front side. It's a bit more high level, but in a lot of replays I've watched, he even tries to time his gank when the enemy top laner TPs back to the lane to really screw him. So the enemy top laner will base, right? He'll start to roam up immediately and be there when he gets back with the TP, so he instantly dies. After that as well, it means he doesn't have the TP cooldown, he doesn't have a way to get back to the lane, so he actually misses a ton of CS to the tower, probably loses his tower, and it's actually one of the cheeky tricks this guy does a lot. With this early game plan anyway, you're definitely going to kick some more ass with Elise, and to be honest, any jungler who can follow the same path. That's one of the reasons that I picked this guy to highlight for the first episode. In teamfights and skirmishes, he's really looking for that cocoon onto a priority target and then to jump in with his spider form, Q, and proto belt to execute that person. It's a lot like Fizz actually. You juke around with your E to dodge stuff, and that's great, but you really wait for your cooldowns and then you use them all in one go to burst. You're going to see him move to the back of the fight, then pounce in and kind of rinse repeat, if that makes sense, over and over to get the fight that he wants. I guess when you're going into a team fight as Elise though with this much damage, the things you have to remember is you are squishy, you will die if you get caught, but if you can cocoon someone and dive in and burst, that is well worth it. I'm still working on the exact format for these kind of videos I want to use, but this is my first attempt. Let me know what you thought and what I could do better. Thank you for watching the video, but for now, let's go to the robots.